Steve Raberdine's generous support on Patreon earned him 4 reward videos. I dedicated a Sunday stream to Suikoden. I made a video about Suikoden. I dedicated a Sunday stream to Suikoden 2, and here we are at long last with his 4th and final video discussing Suikoden 2. I hated the ending. I just wanted to get that out of the way right up front. To me, the ending of Suikoden 2 doesn't work from either a narrative or character standpoint, and that was particularly upsetting because the rest of the game is pretty great. But after 50 hours of enjoying a wonderful story full of drama and intrigue featuring a bevy of archetypal but lovable characters that positively burst at the seams with personality, I was slammed face first into a lackluster denouement so poorly conceived and unearned that I spent the entire weekend pacing my apartment, ranting about the ending's manifold shortcomings to Julia, the spider that has taken up residence on the ceiling in the northeast corner of my living room. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I could only cry righteous tears of indignation as I thoroughly bemoaned in belabored detail why the ending of a 30-year-old RPG vexed me so. An entirely normal and healthy thing to do. Ain't that right, Julia?
Yes. I will lay my eggs in your nasal cavity while you sleep.
Julia says yes. Fortunately, with the notable exception of the aggravatingly upsetting conclusion, I liked this game, and rather than spend the entire video articulating why the ending faceplants so spectacularly, I'd rather talk about the myriad ways it improved on the rightly esteemed original. For example, I criticized the first Suikoden story for feeling more like an outline than a properly flowing narrative, and I'm happy to report the sequel is so much better in that regard. Both games are about a boy who determines he's on the wrong side of a war and joins the resistance, eventually leading their entire army. Tyr, the original game's protagonist, determines he's on the wrong side primarily through conversations with others. The sequel's hero, Ryo, figures it out when he and his childhood friend are the only survivors of a massacre his kingdom perpetrates on its own children in order to blame the other side and justify starting a war. Much more interesting. Tyr is led to the resistance and does a couple missions for them, like rescuing some POWs before being handed command of their entire army. Ryo is captured by the resistance and does manual labor before he's trusted enough to make a grocery run with an escort. He escapes, is captured by his kingdom, then saved from execution by the resistance. Eventually, after proving himself capable, he's given control of a single unit in the resistance army. He and his unit begin making a name for themselves, and after demonstrating their bona fides, he's ultimately made commander of the entire army. Significantly more interesting. And I didn't even mention Joey. He's the childhood friend that escapes the slaughter with Ryo. They get separated in a rushing river, and Joey is saved from drowning by a friendly family in a small rural village. Nursed back to health, he tries to rescue Ryo from the resistance army. He fails and gets captured, but reunited, the two friends find where they belong, make lots of new friends, go on adventures together, and find the game's magical MacGuffins. Then Joey assassinates a politician, leaves Ryo and his companions to take the blame, and rejoins the kingdom's army. Is he hopelessly loyal to the king? Making a mad grab at power? Does he think working for the enemy is the only way he can protect his friends? While you may go back and forth with Joey, there's no ambiguity when it comes to the unrepentant evil that is Luca Blight. You'd be forgiven for not remembering the first game's antagonists beyond their roles in the Empire, because most of them don't have much of a presence in the game outside of meeting them on the battlefield, often for the first and last time. Prince Luca Blight of the Highland Kingdom, though? That psychotic terror is a persistent and terrifying thorn in your ass from moment one. The child massacre that you and Joey barely escape? That was him! The grocery run I mentioned earlier? The next time you visit that town, you find it razed to the ground with Luca Blight at its center, mwah-ha-haing to the sky as he systematically slaughters the survivors. No match for him. All you can do is turn tail and run. Maybe to adorable little Pilika's home of Toto Village. After all, her family is the one who saved Joey in the first place. Oops, Luca got there first. Everyone's dead, including Pilika's parents. Hope she doesn't take that too hard. She's catatonic now. Well, she's formed an emotional attachment to Joey, so as long as he doesn't betray our trust and sell us out to those who immolated everything she ever knew. So, yeah, the sequel's narrative is stuffed to the brim with memorable characters, unexpected twists, and delicious drama, facilitating not only a far more interesting story, but one that's told better as well. But how's the gameplay? Still good. There are a bunch of subtle changes, and they're mostly positive. Mostly. For example, the first game had one of the lowest encounter rates I've seen in an RPG with random battles, but Suikoden 2 lowers it even further, making grinding for experience or rare item drops very frustrating. Imagine walking back and forth through the tall grass in Pokemon for 90 straight seconds and not triggering a fight. I kid you not, I went through an entire dungeon with only 4 encounters before I reached the boss. On the other hand, the low encounter rate does make backtracking a bit easier. Spells are no longer as resource prohibitive for low-level characters, and you can equip more of them at a time, making magic a lot more flexible and useful, particularly early on. Characters' accessory slots have been increased to 3, and they can now be used to equip restorative items and scrolls, a new resource which allows non-magic users to get in on the spell slinging fun. Run out of consumables in the middle of a fight? Characters can now spend their turn accessing the party inventory to restock. Speaking of characters, there are once again 108 Stars of Destiny you can recruit to your cause, some familiar faces from the last game, and many new ones. The first game's cast was comprised of humans and a couple elves and kobolds, so most of the variety stemmed from what kind of fighter they were and what weapon they used. The sequel significantly ups the variety with a vampire, a werewolf, a dog, a robot, members of the Winged Horde, one of whom starts each battle asleep, a girl with a groundhog? Yeah, pretty sure that's a groundhog. A griffin and a unicorn who are so large they take up 2 character slots, and a small army of colorfully caped flying squirrels. The first game's already impressive level scaling has been further improved, making it even easier to bring an underleveled character up to par, and enemies now drop a reasonable amount of cash, allowing players to upgrade and equip the dozens and dozens of heroes at your disposal without save-scumming the gambling minigame. Which is a good thing, because, unlike the first game, the gambling minigame in Suikoden 2 is not conveniently located next to a save point. In fact, the new headquarters in Suikoden 2 is so spread out, it makes mission prep a bit of a time sink. In the first game, after selecting your party members, you can take the elevator down to the first floor and access the shops and the inn. In the sequel, after selecting your party members, you have to walk outside to where most of the shops are, then head back the way you came to reach the inn, which requires you to circle around this wall. I do love how the new headquarters feels like a real community rather than a tree fort for the hero and his 108 special friends. In addition to housing the Stars of Destiny, you'll also find your infantry training, business owners running shops with their families, and even war refugees finding sanctuary. Some of the characters move around, too. Rena might be out here with her friends, or you might find her in the bar having a drink. Small details like these make your headquarters feel much more lively and lived in than the first game. That said, while I like the vibe, it was a couple dozen hours before I memorized the layout. Want to leave via boat? From the inn in the first game, it's down a floor and out the door. In the sequel, it's further. Granted, you get a teleport spell fairly early on, so for most of the adventure you'll have little reason to head out to the docks unless you want to play the fishing minigame. That's right, fishing! Depending on how you count, Suikoden 2 at least doubles the amount of minigames in the original, and not only are they all accessible from your HQ, they often tie into each other in interesting ways. For example, the fish you catch on the docks can be used in the cooking minigame, which rewards recipes that allow you to expand your restaurant's menu, which provides the hero a bit of passive income. Very cool. The minigames are wonderfully varied, well thought out, mechanically distinct, charmingly presented, and go a long way towards making your headquarters feel like a place people actually live. Unfortunately, they're a little annoying to actually play. While I appreciate the lengths the developers went to in order to expand the variety, most of the minigames are a tedious slog to engage with. Actions can take too many button presses, turns can take too long, they're just slow. And sadly, nowhere is this phenomenon more evident than in the completely overhauled army battles. While I loved in the first game how this feature made me feel like a commander of an entire army, I lamented that it mechanically wasn't much more than a game of rock, paper, scissors. Well, the sequel addresses that by revamping the mode into a full-on turn-based strategy tactics game in the vein of Fire Emblem or Romance of the Three Kingdoms. I adore how far they pushed this. It went from minigame simplicity to deep enough to support a standalone game. Unfortunately, like the minigames, while the presentation is great, it's so damn slow that I begin to dread those encounters. You have around a dozen units under your command, and you have to manually select each one, move them, and select an action. This will take several minutes because the similar sprites will force you to manually highlight each unit on your side and each unit on the other side to determine who they are, what they can do, and which action would be most effective on which enemy unit. Then you have to wait for the other side to manage each of its units one by one. Often, the opposing armies start far enough away from each other that the initial rounds are just everyone slowly creeping towards each other. I think the developers realized these battles were a drag to play because most are heavily scripted and don't last much more than 3 rounds before an event happens that ends the entire encounter. Usually reinforcements arrive or one side gives up and retreats. In fact, there's one instance where you can opt out of the entire battle and hang back in the command room. It's not fun. You're stuck there for several minutes with nothing to do but wait for messengers to arrive, give a report, and leave with your commands. It's pretty boring, but it was unique and unexpected, so it was kind of amusing too. I could say that about a lot of the supporting cast as well. Amusing. As in the original, they're mostly pretty one-note, but Suikoden 2 pulls a lot of clever tricks to endear them to you. I mentioned in my Suikoden 1 video that more character vignettes would have helped to flesh out some of the minor players. Perhaps a handful to cap off each major chapter? Sadly, that wasn't in the cards for the sequel, but there is more variety in how the various Stars of Destiny are recruited. I'd prefer more full-on side quests, but what's there, while generally simple, does a much better job of informing the character's character. For example, in the first game, Stallion, an elf known for his speed, joins your party automatically. In the sequel, he'll join only after you prove your own impressive footwork by running from battle 50 times. With the random encounter rate so low, it was a bit of a nightmare grinding out 50 encounters just to flee them, but it is a pretty funny requirement. One of your recruits is a private investigator and will dig up dirt on any of your companions for a small fee. It's simple, but it's another small way to help flesh out characters the story doesn't have room for. Granted, not every secret is particularly lore-heavy. There's also a suggestion box the Stars of Destiny can use, and while I've yet to see an actual suggestion, the comments they leave are often charming and help to add just a bit more personality to the various personalities. Suikoden 2 also upped its animation game to help bring characters to life. There are many more elaborate and creative animations for the various cutscenes and unite attacks. Heck, Ryo and his sister Nanami have 2 versions of their unite attack. In one, she dutifully joins her brother, dealing high damage but losing her next turn. In the other, she slacks off, which results in less damage, but she recovers some health and doesn't lose a turn. So the extra detail is not only mechanically significant, it also informs her character as the immature little sister. Even small details add up, like idle animations, and especially the facial animations. What they're able to convey with blinks and eye darts is damned impressive for a bunch of chunky 3D sprites. But maybe not as impressive as the UI. The first game nearly buckled under the inadequacy of its user interface. Managing equipment for 108 characters was a frustrating and cumbersome chore. But the sequel massively improves on the first game by doing things like labeling objects so you know what they are, displaying how much of a certain item you already own and where you're keeping it, and informing you up front whether a character can use an armor piece before transferring it over to them. Small changes like these add up to a much more playable and pleasant gaming experience, allowing Suikoden 2 to get out of its own way so the player can enjoy the story, characters, and game mechanics. I liked the first Suikoden, but I admired what it did as a mid-90s RPG more than I actually enjoyed playing it. Suikoden 2? There's yet room for improvement, but overall, it was a massive step up over the original, and a title I'm thrilled to say I genuinely enjoyed playing. Shame about that ending, though. Ain't that right, Julia?
Yes. Generations of my children will find sustenance in your soft flesh.
Julia says yes.